I'm Bonnie. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter, where we take the mystery out of the tarot and help you bring this ancient practice into everyday life. In this podcast, we'll talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. So grab your tarot deck, get comfortable, and start your journey to tarot with Bonnie and Peter. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. I'm Bonnie, and today this is part 2 of our Halloween edition. So last week we spoke about our favorite Halloween decks or decks that you could use around this time of year. And we're going to continue that conversation, and we're going to talk about some practices that you can do around this time of year. So when I think about practices that we can do around this time of year, I think about it more as the fall. So you can either sort of incorporate this in fall in general, or if you want to get more specific and practice some of these on or around Halloween, you can absolutely do that as well. So I think the fall is a really wonderful time for letting go and releasing things. It's kind of reminiscent of the leaves falling from the trees. Also how we clean up our gardens, some of that vegetation is now sort of getting old and tired, and we need to cut that down and clear that away. So that's sort of the energy that I'm embracing for the fall. It's also a really great time for transformation as we settle into fall and then start to get ready for winter, which, in Canada comes very early. So I'm going to be talking about a few practices that we can do sort of fall inspired or around Halloween. But Peter, what do you do around this time of year or around Halloween specifically?
Well, around Halloween specifically for me is a lot of, I do a fair amount of, I'll say, retrospective and introspective work. And that's partly because of the spiritual significance of Halloween and the idea that, from a pagan perspective, it does represent that concept of a new year, an old year ending and a new year beginning. The idea of the thin veil of Halloween. So it has traditionally been a great time to do sort of spirit inspired work. So I can do some pretty heavy tarot work around that time, which I'll get into in a little bit. And then my birthday is not that far from Halloween as well. So if I think from an astrological perspective, the sun is in the first house and is likely close to being conjunct my natal sun. I got a bunch of stuff in Scorpio as well. So the sun would obviously be in Scorpio around that time, but in my chart, so is Venus, so is my ascendant, so is Neptune, so is one of the nodes. So there's a lot of first house stuff. So for me, it's always a time to connect with work around the self. So I like to do that. But then I also think it's a fun, lighthearted time. So I have a lighthearted option, that I focus on too. So that's what this period of time means for me. Bit of both. No.
Yeah, you do have a lot of heavy stuff.
Yeah, there is like, it's, I think I've mentioned this before. Scorpio and I have a real affinity to Scorpio things, including a Scorpio tattoo on my left calf. Like I do connect to my Scorpio side. And this is one of those times at that time of the year where it does come out, where the intensity and the depth come out. And I do like to do work that is personal work. And I think it's a good time to do it because of that spiritual time, that is Samhain or that is Halloween. So
Wonderful.
Should we provide some examples of what that might look like from a more practical perspective?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Okay.
Start us off.
So this is actually quite simple, but again, if we're looking at themes of release and letting go, which again, I like to do work in the season where it's actually already going on universally. So that's why moon work is so effective. When you're doing things that are representative of what's actually happening with the moon, it kind of makes that energy a little bit stronger. So I do really believe that the fall or autumn, I'm an autumn baby, so I love the fall. It is a really great time for introspection, for self discovery, and really about letting go of those things that you don't need to carry with you into the next season. So, this really is a time for transformation. And as we're coming into winter, winter is really a time of rest, reflection. So, if you can start letting go of some of those things that you don't need anymore, you might have an easier time in winter so that you can rest knowing that you're not carrying those things with you. So, practice that I really love to do. This is quite simple. You can obviously using your tarot cards, you can pull some cards for what you're ready to release, what you're ready to embrace, and what action steps you can take to support you to do that. I always love adding action steps at the end or like some kind of support that I'm going to get from the tarot. So you could pull 3 cards. So you could just pull 1 card for what am I ready to release, 1 card for what am I ready to embrace, and then 1 card for what's going to support me to move into this new season. Or it could even be what's going to support me to embrace this new thing or what's going to support me to let go of that. The beauty of that is you can pull as many cards as you want. So if you pull 1 card and you're like, okay, yeah, I understand I need to release that. You pull another one. Yeah, I need to embrace that. That makes sense. I can do this action step. But if you don't feel finished, you can do that as many times as you want. Again, you can do that any time of year, but that's really, I think it's a really strong practice to do around this time. So that would be practice number 1 for me, what you're ready to release and what you're ready to embrace.
Yeah, I can't say ditto, can I? Because
Oh, was that what you were going to
no,
say?
no, it's not. But it would be very similar. It would be very similar. And I was checking. 'Cause I've talked about the idea of timing, and you talk about the idea of moon work, and I'm like, I'm almost positive that there's something special around this particular year. So if you're listening to this one in around like October 31st, November 1st period of 2024, there's actually a new moon in Scorpio. So the new moon this year is November 1st for those of us in North America. I think it might be November 1st,
Ah,
November 2nd for people that are in Europe or in Australia. But again, that new moon, the idea of new beginnings, it is it's a great time to ask that question. So I would probably ask very similar questions. I wouldn't necessarily turn them to that fall or autumn time. It would be more around that Samhain time. What kind of things need to end? That concept of Scorpio, of death, of ending. So what do we need to let go? What no longer serves us? And I would use the time to ask that question. I would always start off this time with that thin veil, asking the question, what do I need to know right now? What does the universe need to tell me? So I always think that's a great, almost an aside question. And, Bonnie, as you mentioned, that could be, well, 1 card for what do I need to know, 1 card or, 2 cards for, what do I need to let go, what needs to end, what needs to die right now? Like the idea of even using the language that says, something needs to die.
well, is the death card not
It's linked to
the death
Scorpio.
card is Scorpio, right?
Correct.
So
Yep. Yeah. So that's why I was using the language that's appropriate for the season, as opposed to softening it like we do. But again, this year in particular, the idea of, well, then what needs to begin again? Because
Mhm.
if we think about the journey through the major arcana, that ending really does happen at card number 13 with the death card. But then that whole idea of new beginnings, that whole idea of starting again, goes from card 14 right to card 21. It's not like the major arcana journey ends with card 13 in the representation of death in Scorpio. There is that concept of being born again. So that
Yep.
new moon on November 1st, November 2nd in Scorpio is going to be a great time this year to be able to do that sort of work. So I think drawing a card again, what do I need to begin? What are the signs of a new beginning? And drawing 1 card, 2 cards, 3 cards, whatever feels like it's completing the story for you. Even to borrow your suggestion, it might be, what 3 steps do I need to follow, in this journey to start something new? Or what 2 steps might I need to follow? And then drawing a card for step 1 and a card for step 2. So I think any work that costs, and again, for me, as I've mentioned, the idea that it is often reflective work. So this is a time where I really do like to reflect on myself and my own work and really get introspective and deep to honor my Scorpio side, but also to honor this time of year. It's really good. It's a really good time of year to do that. So first thing I would do, I would really ask that general question: what do I need to know from the universe right here, right now, in this time and in this space? And then I would look at the idea: what needs to die right now? What needs to end? And then, particularly because of the astrology right around this time, but there's always a new moon that's coming in and around, in Scorpio. In the 30 days that are Scorpio, there's a new moon that's going to happen at some point in time in there. I would also focus on that idea of new beginnings. What do I need to start? What do I need to start anew? So, and this, for me, sometimes these are multi-card spreads. So I would be known to look at this in 3 columns and to draw 4, 5, 6 cards in each column, and really to take a look at a solid narrative. This would be the kind of thing that I would leave out for 2, 3, 4 days, go back to and reflect. This would be the time where I'd be thinking about questions, or where I'd pull out, a journal. I probably have journals somewhere that have all kinds of entries on October 31st, November 1st, and have no other entries at any other time. So it's really a good time for retrospective work. So that would be my first idea, which would very much build on what you had suggested as well. So hopefully people.
I love that. I'm so glad that we're doing this, because I think we learn so much from each other. I typically I do a lot of work around the moon cycles, but I don't really typically do work around Halloween specifically. Mind you, because my kids are still small, so I was going trick or treating with them, and it was often a really busy day. Now, I mean, they're getting older, but one still goes trick or treating, so I'm curious to see how my tarot practice is going to evolve with the inclusion of doing things actually specifically on Halloween. But definitely the new moon. I love how you mentioned that the new moon is on November the 1st. Yeah, a perfect time for setting new intentions. And it's like, what do I need to let go of so that I can create something new? That is super powerful. Yeah. So thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, no worries. And the challenge, of course, the personal challenge is going to be, I'm going to be traveling over that period of time. So, I don't know what that's going to look like. I always travel with the tarot deck, so there's no question that there will be one with me. And I'm going to some places where, in all likelihood, I will do some shopping for new experiences.
I am so jealous. Not jealous. Jealous is not a nice word. I'm envious. Yeah. And I'm excited for you.
So I actually think we have we have dinner plans on the 31st itself. So I won't be doing any work. But anyways, yeah, I'm curious from a personal perspective, because I will still absolutely get time in, because it's a non-negotiable for me. But I'm curious to see what it'll look like, and maybe at a future episode, we'll talk about some of the practical changes you need to do to try and include the tarot into your everyday life when it's not at home, when it's somewhere
when
else.
You're traveling.
Yeah, this will be part of a 3-week kind of travel schedule. So.
Okay, so I'm going to reveal my next my next practice. This is a little bit more Halloween inspired. So on our previous podcast, our sort of part 1 to this little mini series, I talked about sort of exploring your fears around Halloween. And I know definitely for me, it's a time where I'm a little more open to facing some things that are a little bit scary. And I think that's why I'm sort of enamored by things that are really scary on Halloween, because it sort of opens me up to that. So in thinking about that, I thought, well, this would be a really great time on pulling some cards to reveal or to identify what your fears are and how to transcend them. So again, this is work to do if you're in an emotional state that feels good for you. The other thing, when you're doing work like this, if you're using decks that are often used for shadow work, they can really help with identifying your fears, because sometimes those decks show us parts that may be challenging for us to look at, and then we can sort of peel back the layers and figure out why that is. So if you're in a space where that feels good for you and that's comfortable for you, I would suggest, picking a deck that might not frighten you, that but maybe not so comfortable for you, or a deck that you really love that really helps you to identify those fears, and then pull some cards. Again, I'm trying to make this, super easy to follow, but you could pull one, two, three cards, sort of pulling a card to identify your fear, and then pulling another card on how you can transcend that. And again, if you need to pull more than one for each of those placements, then you can absolutely do that. So I would definitely do this work. I have been working a lot more with decks that I would consider shadow decks, which I didn't used to do in the past. My love of tarot and studying the tarot is really helping me go into some spaces that I wasn't really ready to see before. And I think that's the beauty of this practice. It meets you where you are, and it grows with you. So if you're in a place to do that, and you want to see what might be holding you back, this might be a really good time to do that. So that's kind of like my facing your fears spread, and then using a deck that would help you do that.
Great. Yeah, and I think about practitioners as well who really do focus on doing some of that shadow work. So, even to add, if you are looking to consider doing some shadow work with the tarot, is seeking out a practitioner whose work, whether it's written work or online work, might be able to support you. I know we both mentioned Sasha Graham, around that kind of work. Persephone's sister is another one who comes to mind as well that does sort of, psych based or, shadow work as well. So, because sometimes that can be, you had mentioned right off the bat, to be in the right emotional space to do that. Sometimes that can be work that does require even just a little bit of support or a little bit of crutch, from another tarot practitioner. So don't be afraid to seek out people who might be able to help you out in that regard as well. No.
Yes, absolutely. If
Yeah.
you're not prepared to do that work on your own, but that's something that you're interested in exploring, then I would 100% suggest that you get the support that you need to be able to do that. So,
Yeah, and if you're prepared to start on your own, you've got a great spot. Bonnie just gave you a great suggestion on how to start that work on your own. So you can also seek out practitioners like Bonnie who are
oh,
giving you some spreads to be able to, start that work. So, and who are modeling it by talking about doing that work on their own. So it is a powerful tool for that.
for sure.
Yeah.
What's your next practice, Peter? What do you have to share with us?
I went with the opposite end of the Halloween
Uh,
theme because I talked about a lot of intensity in the first work that I would have done. I would use a very simple what I call, and I don't think I borrowed this or found this elsewhere. I actually think this is one of the spreads that I created on my own. If it sounds like something that somebody else has done, then my apologies. We've come up with a great idea. Um, you know, um, Together. I call it the trick or treat spread. And it is literally a 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 card spread, trick on one side, treat on the other. And trick being those things that are hidden, that might be
mm,
deceptive or unwanted. They might represent an unfavorable outcome. They might represent an obstacle. So anything that falls underneath that trick category. The treat category would be the opposite. It would be what kind of a treat or a gift is being offered. What welcomed support is finding its way towards you. What favorable income outcome. It could be
favorable
favorable
income
income.
would be nice.
Could be that too. Favorable outcome might be finding its way towards you as well. And this is just a fun way to sort of play on the theme of trick or treat that is very Halloween based, and using those words intentionally to support a self-created spread with the tarot. So trick on one side, and any word that kind of links to the word trick, and then treat on the other side, and any word that links to the word treat. I actually put trick on the left side and treat on the right side because, again, left side tended to be, that sinister side. Even as somebody who is left-handed, the idea. I think that the root of the word sinister actually comes from the concept of left. The word in French for left is gauche. Gauche often means awkward, and you know, um, so but I would physically lay it out in that way. I would put trick on the left side and I would put treat on the right side, and use language that highlights both of those words, and then develop questions around that to suit whatever I'm looking at that time. So Halloween's a good time to do the trick or treat spread. 2 cards, 4 cards, 6 cards, 8 cards, but always balanced. So
I love that. That's such a great idea and a fun
Yeah,
way to look at that. I love to use the tarot for things that I can't see. So and I get that with your trick or treat, right? Like the trick could
yeah,
be like, what is it that I'm not seeing
mhm,
right now? What is hidden?
yeah,
So I love that playful aspect of using that wording to come
mhm,
up with that. And then with the treat of like, oh, what am I not appreciating or
correct.
what am I not
Yeah.
acknowledging that's,
Even
there?
gratitude. We talked about gratitude before. It could
Yep.
be, what is it that, I need to be grateful for? What is life treating me with, right? That idea.
I love that. I'm doing that. I'm going to do that on Halloween. I'm declaring.
You just
I'm doing the
declaring.
trick or treat spread on Halloween.
Okay, awesome. Good, good,
Yes.
good,
Good.
good. I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear. Okay.
Do you have any more
Well,
practices you want to share with
no,
us, Peter?
I don't. Do you? No, I just had the
No, I
two that,
think
I
we're
was kind of
good.
thinking of. So, I think that's
Yeah,
probably,
I think this is a great, I mean, any time is a great time to use your tarot
yeah, of
cards
course it is.
and for introspection. So we're just trying to give you some ideas of what you can do around this time.
Yeah.
Peter and I, as you know, absolutely love Halloween. We're still in our costume
We are. We
for
are.
part two of this little mini Halloween edition. So
Yeah.
okay, so shall we pull a card?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm going right back to the same one I used in the first one of this edition, which is my brand new horror tarot.
Ah,
Very
yes.
Halloween friendly. How about you?
You know what? I'm going to go with Halloween Tarot.
Okay, there you go.
Halloween Tarot by Karen Lee and Kipling West. This is I'm not an RWS girl. Well, I am in the sense that I follow that system mostly for my readings, but I'm not huge on decks that typically represent those images,
Right.
but this Halloween tarot is just so cute. So this is my homage to
The-
I know how much you love the Rider-Waite Smith piece.
yes. Well, I should mention it's Todd Alcott, I think, who's the creator of this horror deck as well. And I talked about it in the previous episode too. So, and it is not funny enough. At least the images are not Rider-Waite inspired. They're inspired by pulp fiction and the, horror movies, horror comics, horror paperbacks, horror posters, horror artwork. Um, so, all right.
Okay.
You going to start us off?
Sure. I had a jumper.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yep. So it's funny. Again, I've said this before. I can't make this stuff up. In our previous episode, we were talking about decks that we loved, and we shared some images of cards that we love from those decks. But of course, due to timing, we can only share so many. There was one card that I had in my pile to share, and I didn't because I was like, okay, I got to move on with this. And she made an appearance today, so this card wanted to be read on our show and she popped right out of this deck. So this is a lovely surprise.
Yeah, I'm
So
curious.
this is the Queen of Pumpkins.
Oh, okay.
And the pumpkins in this deck relate to the suit of
Mhm.
Pentacles. I love the Queen of Pentacles. I love the Queen of Wands. I want to be the Queen of Wands, but I also want to be the Queen of Pentacles. So in this card, again, it's very Rider-Waite Smith
Mhm.
inspired. It's just really lovely and beautiful. So she's holding a pumpkin. She's got her black cat beside her. There's the rabbit, the bunny in the picture. The moon is looking down at her, smiling. And she's just the epitome of generosity and kindness and just being there when you need somebody. She's also, I think of her as like the working mom who like bakes chocolate chip cookies and gets your kids to soccer practice on time. Like she does it all, but she does it from this place of like love and nurturing. And she also stands in her power. She's quite often the entrepreneur and so she's very confident, but also super loving and that person that you just want to be with. She offers so much nurturing. So again, when we think about the suit of Pentacles related to that earth element, it's very nurturing and compassionate. She's also super grounded. So if you're needing to embody this type of energy, maybe seeking support from somebody who really makes you feel seen and heard, and who will just kind of give you a big hug, or even like using this as an opportunity maybe to connect with nature, to go outside, to really ground yourself. Again, offering yourself those practices that really nurture you and make you feel really good and grounded. Also, a great opportunity to practice some gratitude. Peter knows we talk
Yeah,
about this
the
a lot with
pentacles.
the
Yeah,
pentacles, right? How can we be thankful for the abundance that we have? Because this queen also is the epitome of abundance, and she uses it in a way where she loves to share it with others. So how can we appreciate what we already have in our lives and share that with others? So yeah, that's the Queen of Pentacles. What would you add for the Queen of Pentacles, Peter?
nothing. I'm glad you mentioned abundance because that's what when I looked at the card, I was like, oh my goodness, like you can really see the abundance that would be the Queen of Pentacles in, in other decks. No, other than that, I have nothing to add. What would I add? You
She's the one
said it
giving
all.
out all the good candies on
Candy, right?
Halloween. She's the one giving out the candy bar, like the full size
Yeah.
candy bars
But
at Halloween.
I know, but you also said that she's also doing that after probably having, been, whether it's entrepreneurship at home, keeping the house together, or whether, it's out of the home, being the CEO of whatever company it is that she is. Because again, this is practical day to day, I've got my stuff together. Pentacles energy, and she's the queen, so she's the internal master of that. She's got that down pat.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I was taken by the image, by the abundance in the image, and
Mhm.
I'm glad you mentioned that. No, got nothing else, nothing else. I I drew a pentacle as well, so
Oh,
I thought it was funny. Now I should probably and one as well that would be set in abundance, but keep in mind the theme of the deck that I have used. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit because I did before. For those who didn't see part one, it's called the Horror Tarot, and it is themed in pulp horror fiction. So the Pentacles suit are all comic book covers. They're all 15-cent comic book covers. So they're kind of 1950s style. The subtext or the subtitle of this one is called The Apprentice, which is absolutely appropriate for the Eight of Pentacles. The image, though, is going to be somewhat disturbing. So I'm going to let people who are watching know now. Somebody
uh-huh.
who is apprenticing, what they're doing is they're collecting the heads of what people in the horror genre would call the final girl. These are the main characters in horror movies. Who are going to confront whatever beast happens to be there. And 7 of them have been unsuccessful because this apprentice happens to be collecting their heads in a jar and is about to what looks like collect the head of a pentacle number 8. So I always think, when I take a look at this one, I'm like, okay, has done a really good job of capturing the essence of the deck as well as the essence of the Eight of Pentacles, because the Eight of Pentacles is that, that eights are around movement, pentacles around work. The idea of, let's get moving. We've got some work that we've got to do. The idea of, nose to the grindstone. There's a sense of pride of the work that we're doing as well, but we're not quite finished our work yet. And what we've got here is somebody who is clearly an apprentice. They are I'll say, the bumbling left hand, person of whoever the master criminal mind is. And, their job is to collect heads and put them in glass jars. Um,
Mm.
yeah. So, they're working hard in an area that a lot of people don't work in other than in the pulp fiction genre, collecting the heads of people. But yeah, that's what the Eight of Pentacles, and right, as you can see, right, suit of Pentacles, and then it has under the subtext the Eight of Pentacles, and then the Apprentice. So I do love this deck. It's so spot on to its genre and its intention. What would you add to the Eight of Pentacles, whether it's this one or another one?
I can't say that I've ever seen an Eight of Pentacles quite like that.
No, neither can I.
Interesting.
Neither can I. But it's the product of his work, right? He's
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
he's doing his
no.
work. He's not quite finished his work yet. He's working hard, accomplishing what he has to accomplish, still learning the trade a little bit, but
Yeah.
kind of digging in there. I always think nose to the grindstone's always what, comes to mind with that Eight of Pentacles. But yeah.
Yeah, I love the Eight of Pentacles in general. I'm really excited when that card shows up for me because for me it's really about work that you love to do. So it is, being the apprentice. honing in on your craft, every day going and sort of doing those same details over and over again to really master that. But it's because it's something that you absolutely love to do.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're working hard and like you're so overwhelmed with all of this work. I mean, it could be depending on some other cards that might show up in the spread, but it's really about I think work that you love
Mhm.
and that's joyful for you. And when that shows up in a spread, it's really validation that you're doing something that's meaningful that you really like to do, or something that it is that you want to do if that's coming up, depending on where that is in the spread. So I love the Eight of Pentacles. I agree with what you're saying. It's about work, and also like being confident about the work that you're doing too, right? Because quite often that eight is about standing in your power and being confident and strong. So knowing that the work that you're doing is really going to have an impact and you're probably really good at it, even if you're still trying and you're not quite there yet, you haven't mastered it yet, but keep going.
Yeah.
So
It's a great reminder that the eights actually also sit in the family of strength as well. So it's that idea that, the eights in all the suits are also linked to the major arcana strength card. So the idea of sitting in your power is really important with this card. So, thank you. Thank you for that reminder. And the same thing with the idea that, it is a card about moving that work forward, because the eights are also about that. The eights are about, about movement. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for adding to that. Much appreciated. I'm
well, thank
grateful.
you for pulling
Yeah,
that card.
it's a pentacle, so I'm grateful
You're grateful.
for the combined interpretation of the card. As
I
as
love that.
interesting as that image was, well, I tell you, some of the images in there, you're like, ooh, but it is
Will I be
colorful.
afraid, Peter? Is that deck going to scare me if
No,
I
I
buy
don't.
it?
Well, I don't know. That was probably one of the scariest cards in there. Seven severed
Okay.
heads under, under bell glass. But if that's going to scare you, then possibly.
Then possibly. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm
Right,
exploring some scarier
for
decks, so I'm
sure,
pretty proud of myself.
for sure. Well done.
Thank you. So, Peter, where can people find you? Do you have anything going on you'd like to share?
Sure. So people can always find me Peter White Tarot. So that's peterwhitetarot.com for my website. Always a great place to land initially. If you go there for the first time, you'll be asked to sign up for my newsletter. So please do, because that's also a great place. Um, well, it's a great place to find out what's going on, but it's also a great place to get some moon-based tarot work. I had talked about the idea of the full moon or the new moon in Scorpio coming around November 1st. So usually what happens is on moon days or Mondays in your mailbox, you will get some tarot work that will support you in doing any moon work for either the new or the full moon. And you get that simply by signing up to my newsletter. So that's one thing. And then you can also stay up to date on things that are coming up, including my working with the tarot or planning 2025 through the tarot, which will be coming up later in November of 2024. You'll be able to sign up for that live course as well. Oh, those are the things I've got going on. What about you, Bonnie?
Awesome. People can find me on my website or they can find me on Instagram at Breathe with Bonnie, but also on my website, which is breathewithbonnie.com. Again, I have a newsletter. You can sign up for that. Each month, I send out an intention based on a card reading. So you'll always have access to a monthly 3-card reading and an intention that goes along with that. And also any events that I'm going to be going to, or any classes or workshops that I'll be holding, or any services that I offer are definitely all included, mostly on my website, sometimes on social media. I definitely update my website more than my social media. So
Good. Excellent. And to all of you, thank you so much for taking the time today to sit with the tarot with Bonnie and I. We really appreciate your support. And again, to engage with us, please, by all means, any comments that you have, questions that you have as well in an upcoming episode, we'd actually like to answer your questions live. So if you have questions that you'd like us to address by using the tarot, please, by all means, put them in the comments below or email us. Our email address is in the show notes. You can email us here you can email Bonnie and I here through our email address, or please, by all means, subscribe, share, like. The more you engage, the more people get to hear what it is that we're doing with the tarot. So, with that, I want to say thank you so much. We are forever grateful to all of you, and we will see you again. Bye bye for now.
Bye.